welcome to the CRE Arena. Today we have a very special episode and a very special guest. We have Patrick Sentner out of Pittsburgh, who is a top producing commercial real estate broker with Colliers. So, Patrick, welcome to the show.
Augie, I am pumped to be here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we're excited to have you. Patrick has been a very influential voice throughout the commercial real estate world for quite some time now, and previously the SIOR global president, which I assume that's a big role. Those are big shoes to fill. So you're just coming off that, right?
I am. It was supposed to be a 4-year commitment, but it turned into a 5-year commitment because of COVID. But I can tell you from probably May of 21 through last December, I was traveling a minimum of once a week. And in fact, it hit me.
Wow.
I have not been in Pittsburgh for 2 straight weeks since April of 21. So it has
Wow.
given me an opportunity to really understand, basically all of North America and even parts of Europe from a real estate market standpoint, an opportunity to learn from some of the best and brightest minds in our industry. It was a fantastic experience.
Yeah, that's incredible. And I honestly didn't know that. I didn't know that you all would like travel that much in that role. So, and we'll get into it more, but I mean, I'm interested here and now, like what's with all the travel? I mean, I know there's a good amount of conferences and different chapter conferences and things like that. Would you say that's most of it? Or, what other things are you doing when you're the, president of a global brand like that?
Well, one of the things we realized is, we're now up to 3,900 members across the country. And at our spring and fall conferences, we typically get between 900 and 1,100 people. And in doing so, what we realize is there's still another 2,000 people who are not actually getting the hands-on experience. We're not sitting there talking to them. And so last year we made a conscious effort to get out to all 49 chapters. And it
Wow.
took, myself, it took our sitting president, our sitting vice president, our sitting president-elect, because especially there were times, in December where we might have 10 chapter holiday parties. And so we were going in and out. And because in the past, if we weren't given a big opportunity to speak on a stage, we typically weren't going. But we're a relationship industry as a whole. Mm-hmm. So when I go out to northern New Jersey to a cocktail party with 50 brokers, I'm able to not only talk about SIOR, but I'm able to learn from them as to what's going on in their markets and those types of things. So it really was a good chance to interact with, when all was said and done, probably about 75 to 80% of all of our members across the globe. So it was a great opportunity.
That's incredible. And then, so in the United States, compared to like how many chapters are here in the United States versus overseas?
Realistically, we have, I think it's 46 are in the US. Then we have Mexico, Canada, and Europe. And our Europe group is growing pretty rapidly. And as you might expect, if you go from Ireland out to Poland, that's a pretty big swath of land. So we're hoping to maybe eventually get into more subchapters over there as we continue to grow outside of North America.
No, that's great. And then, so SIOR, it's such a well-established brand here in the States. And I think it's just well-established and very, very well respected with, consistently top producers, but also people of incredible, high morals and character as well. In Europe or in Mexico, do they have other, I don't want to say like competing organizations, but like, are there other organizations that are well respected similar to SIOR, or is it like SIOR is and CCIM maybe is like the global, kind of recognition for high value commercial real estate brokers?
In North America, it is SIOR. In Europe, historically, RICS, which I am a fellow of, has been the standard. So we have partnered with them and have a number of us who have joined that organization as well, which is a way to really make sure that those who don't know who SIOR actually are, they're thinking, hey, these are just a bunch of people from the United States just plopping in trying to make money.
Yeah.
No, what we're trying to do is to get the best and the brightest throughout the world into our organization so
Mhm.
that when our clients call and say, hey, I have somebody in Cleveland I need. Okay, great. I have 20 SIORs, but I also have somebody in Warsaw. Okay, yeah, I have two people. I can get jumping on that immediately for you.
Yeah.
We want to be able to do that for all of our clients.
Yeah, I've put it on the back burner for a number of years, and I've got some mentors in my life that have told me like, "Hey, it's time to go do it officially." So actually, probably within the next 30 days, I've been for the past 2 3 years, I've been in the member associate track with SIOR, but I'll have my designation here in the next 30 days or so.
Oh,
Um,
that's exciting. I thought you were a member associate as
yeah,
well because that's actually how I got involved because I ended up being asked to chair the task force to create the member associate program or develop it, I should say,
yeah,
many years ago. And I am so pumped when I look around and I see a bunch of people, in their late 20s, early 30s who are getting involved in our organization just
right.
because we've been around for 80 years. We want to be around for another 80 years. And
Mhm.
I know the odds of me living, another 40 years, let alone 80 years, is just not going to happen. So
Right.
we do what we can and we want to just continue to grow. And, hopefully I'll be around when we have our 100th anniversary in 20 years.
Yeah, no, that's incredible, and no, I think that your task force has paid off in full circle. That we're sitting here today, we got
That's
all these
awesome.
big industrial buildings behind me, and I think that's pretty cool. And SIOR has just been an organization that I've seen when getting into the business, because when you get into the business as a young person, it's no secret that you can do very well, and this can be a very lucrative career path. And oftentimes, when there's bigger money type industries or opportunities, the greed, the shady activity, like that can really come in. And being a believer and just being of somebody that's of high moral character, when I came in, I was like, man, I don't want any part of like the greed, the like really materialistic approach to things. Like I was so standoffish to that. And then when I met a couple SIORs in my market and like I was moving and shaking and did a couple transactions, and I was just like, man, this is the way that these guys operate is different. And I don't know if you know him, but like Ed Miller, I did
Hmm.
that deal was Ed Miller at a SIOR event. He
Oh,
said
nice.
he said he was with Bob Kruger, and he said we bought it from Bob Kruger with Brennan and Co. But he took one brochure. He said Ed said, Augie, I brought this one brochure to this cocktail hour, and like I think you're the guy that I give it to. And so he like pulled it out of his jacket and gave it to me. And then it's a 200,000 square foot facility. We closed probably 6 months later.
Oh,
Um,
dang. That's fantastic.
Not sure if I can say this or not, but incredible. First tour was actually the day that I was going to propose to my wife. And I met Ed out there, and then it was an industrial building, but they had the old style wood panel offices up there, fake fireplace, big leather chairs. And he's like, you're getting engaged tonight. I was like, well, I mean, if she says yeah, it's like hopefully. He's like, hey, we got a lot of walking to do. This thing's 200,000 square feet. He went up and grabbed two rolling rocks, and we just toured the facility. And I just got the wisdom from Ed, and like not only the ins and outs of the building. It was just a really really good memory. The SIOR and the organization, like this is what I want to be a part of.
That's a
Incredible,
great, great story.
yeah, incredible people in that organization. So can't recommend it enough. We kind of want to backtrack a little bit. I want to jump into SIOR just because it's such an amazing organization. But before then, and like how you got to, I mean, SIOR global president, and like having much success in commercial real estate. Where did it all start? Like where did you grow up? Where did you go to school? What did you study? And how'd you get to where you are today?
Like a lot of things, it was being put in the right place at the right time because candidly growing up nobody from my mom's side of the family or my dad's side from the family had actually even graduated from college, so I
Wow.
was the first person from either side to graduate. My dad worked in a warehouse, my mom cleaned houses. I caddied, my brother and I caddied growing up, which by the way was a fantastic way to learn how to golf because we got the chance to golf every Monday at 6 o'clock in the morning on a
There you
really
go.
nice course. So that
Yeah.
actually was very positive. Uh, Whether I knew it or not at that time, I realized that I did have, I would say, a gift to be able to talk to anybody. So, when you're caddying, you are working with people who might be senior execs in Fortune 500 companies, but they also may own trucking companies. They may own janitorial companies, and you learn to deal with a different grouping of people. And it was a great setting for me to learn. Now, even at that time, I had no clue what I was going to do because I go to Westminster College to run track. Ended up realizing that I loved student government. I loved our fraternity. I just loved being involved with everything. But in the late 80s, when you were a finance major, you were told you're not in sales, you only interview with banks. So ended up getting a job in banking right out of college.
Yeah.
Luckily for me, I knew I did not want to work in a consumer bank, a bank branch. I wanted to do on
Right.
the commercial side, had the opportunity to do that, and literally spent a year and a half of my training doing nothing but reviewing financial statements to put credit risks associated with each loan. That was, at the time, I'm thinking this is really monotonous and boring. Now that I look 30 years ago, I'm like, that was fantastic
Yeah.
training, because now there's not a financial statement that I don't at least understand and can
Right.
at least explain to my clients, hey, here's what we're looking at, whether it's the landlord or the tenant. So I guess it was about year five of what I was doing on the banking side, where I was looking to get the mortgage on a new commercial development. And I found out that, one of the minority owners of the project was the broker. And I'm like, wait, this is kind of weird. He's only about 6 or 7 years older than me. I want to figure out how he's doing this. So I literally just kept cold calling him to the point where he'd have breakfast with me. And then after a couple more breakfasts, he brought me in. He was getting ready to switch companies to start the third party brokerage group for a developer here in Pittsburgh known as Oxford Development Company.
Hmm.
And I came over about a month later, and he literally spent the entire first year doing nothing but cold calling. And at the end of the year, I think I had done one deal. So in my mind, candidly, I thought I sucked.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden, the two top guys in the office say, "Hey, Pat, we'd like you to be partners with us." And I'm like, "Wait, this makes no sense. I've produced literally like $16,000 in the past year."
Yeah.
Uh, but then what I realized was, oh, I have a pipeline. At that time, I didn't know what that was. And when all was said and done, it worked out so well that by the end of that year, I didn't think my wife was going to ever be a stay-at-home mom, but she got pregnant, and I hit my cycle, and I was like, "Tag, you're it," because she's the one that supported me in that first year and a half of brokerage.
Yeah.
Got pregnant, and she was able to stay home with all three of our kids. And I don't think, in fact, let me take I don't think out of it. And I would not have been able to do that if I would have been staying at the bank. So
Right.
brokerage gave us the opportunity to have her be a stay-at-home mom, which she just loved. And I think it did help our children dramatically, and it helped me dramatically too, and allowed me to really help build not just my clients and my book of business, but 5 years later, we started our own company from scratch here in Pittsburgh, and would love to tell you it was easy and it was immediately successful. But having the right infrastructure at home with such a rock star wife, it allowed us to continue to grow. And so that company that we started, was NAI Pittsburgh for 6 years.
Hmm.
But specifically, I know on my part, I was doing a ton of occupier work. And, NAI has some fantastic offices, but there's, some markets where they don't have anybody that does occupier. And Colliers then started recruiting our firm. And so we switched over and we were Colliers. And then about 5 years, almost 6 years later, Colliers Corporate came in to buy us. Well, at that time, I'm like, okay, sure, why not? But CB and JLL got wind of that in Newmark and started recruiting me. So I'm talking with my partners, and they're like, Pat, this is going to be better for you. And candidly, it'll be better for us if you leave right now as well. So we
Yeah.
actually looked at it, and I spent then 6.5 years with CB, got recruited to come back to the company that I founded back on Labor Day of last year.
Wow. No,
So full circle moments here.
that is incredible to where you started. So with let me go back. So with you said it was Oxford Development.
Oxford Development Company, correct.
So were you the in-house broker there, or you were trying to just fill their pipeline and connect with brokers, or how'd that go?
So what they did is they had probably about 5 or 6 brokers that represented their properties. But what
Right.
they wanted to do was to start a group that was, in essence, local tenant rep work. So they brought in my one partner who was an office tenant rep, another guy who was an industrial tenant rep, and then they brought me in, and then we grew it from there. And some of the folks that had been there before started branching out, and I mean, the numbers that we did in those first couple of years were mind-boggling,
Yeah.
and to do that in a market like Pittsburgh was pretty exciting. Let's put it that way.
And those were mostly office properties. Were
From
there?
my standpoint, 100. I've been 100% office locally, but I do corporate service work where I'll do all the account work, and a couple of those groups are industrial.
Gotcha. Okay. No, that's great. And then, so from there, the decision to go out on your own. Walk me through that. So how old were you? You've been in the business for 5 years, I guess, but you had the commercial
Yes.
banking experience
So
before that. So
I
like,
was 34.
there you go. So why go out on your own? And then how did that go? What was the first year or two? I know you said it's not easy, but what does that look like?
Well, the funny thing was, and saying this out loud right now is pretty sad, but my main corporate account that I had, we were helping them grow. It was an insurance brokerage company that 15 years ago ended up becoming part of Willis, but was doing so much work with them. I literally asked the chief operating officer at Oxford at the time if I could have a 5% better split on the particular account, and
Hmm.
they said no without even talking with the management team on it. So
Mm,
I went down to my partner and I'm like, do we really want to keep doing this like this forever? And he's
yeah.
like, we're on the same page. And we then spent the next year um, making great numbers for Oxford, but at the same time trying to figure out what we wanted to do. And interestingly, we were so close to being Starbuck Pittsburgh. And to the point where I was fortunate enough to be at Roger Staubach's house, was at his box at a Cowboys game. And
Hmm.
my partner at the time, he didn't like the fact that Staubach got 12% of the fees. All these years later, my goodness, it would have been paid off in spades. But at
Yeah,
the time, he
yeah,
felt that that was a little high, so that's when we decided to go to NAI and start it. But realistically, we did really well. There's 4 of us that went in together. We literally threw in 25 grand each, so we. It's not like we were highly capitalized. Had
yeah.
100,000 in cash, and then we had a line of credit. Um, we never had to really draw on that line for more than like a week at a time, and we were paying ourselves within the first year.
Wow.
So it definitely was a little slower than we would have wanted. But again, looking back at it 20 years later, we did really well. And candidly, we also, going back to what you were saying with SIORs and trying to keep things above board,
Yeah.
the separation agreement that I had with Oxford was one of the most professional things I've ever seen. And I remember their general counsel, we were looking at, I don't know, like 35 different deals. And he said, you
Mhm.
know what? 1/3 of these will stay with us. 1/3 of them will go with you, and the other third will go somewhere else. So why don't we just work together and then just have you do these on behalf of Oxford? And that's what I did. So that actually provided, the family income that I needed,
Yeah.
during that first year, year and a half of having a startup company.
That's incredible, and I think that's when you do things the right way and you go the right way by people and you do a good job, it's hard to ignore that, and people want to
Yeah.
continue to work with you and see you win, and I think that's big, and you don't always see. Uh, a lot of people can see it as the competition or bad blood or whatever it is, but I mean, really, when you're talking human to human and you've built a relationship with somebody and provided value to somebody or a company organization for so many years, um, and that's how I feel is like, hey, I want everybody that's with me on my team, like I want them to like achieve their own dreams and their own
Yes.
goals for their life. And if that means that they're with me for 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, or 6 months, like whatever that looks like. Obviously, we're grateful to have them as long as we can. But I never would ever want to be like the ball and chain to somebody's dreams, you know?
Absolutely. And it's
So
exciting when you see, because when we had our company, my main role was producing as much income as humanly possible to help keep the lights on and everything.
yeah,
And I always thought, I'm like, you know what, I've done a bad job mentoring. I should have been helping some of these younger brokers. But literally in the past couple of days, I've been talking to some people and they're like, Pat, you realize you probably did better than you thought you did because each of the people that you brought in are doing extremely well. One's a managing director of a huge office. Another is one of JLL's top producers. Another one's in the hall right across from me right now. And another one, she's actually in-house real estate for a Fortune 500 company. So it's like,
wow,
oh, I guess it wasn't as bad as I thought. They had to learn at
yeah.
least something.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, and I think that's when it comes to playing at a really high level, and when you have a mentor that knows how to play at a high level, and really, what does that mean in commercial real estate? I mean, if you're playing at a high level, that just means you're providing incredible value, to your clients, and doing a really good job. And I think um, forming a team that kind of sets that standard, like once you're on that team and then you adopt that standard, I mean, and usually those people have a similar standard before they join the team,
Right.
especially personally and maybe professionally, but then obviously they're groomed into professionally having that, be playing at a very high standard. Then those people are going to go off and they're either going to stay with you or they're going to go off and do other great things on their own. So I think that's an incredible testament to leadership and really like sewing into the next generation.
And that's one of the things we were talking a little bit before about SIR and trying to get the younger people. And again, it's not that we don't want to take care of our older members who have been there for 50 years. No, we want to have literally people from their 20s into their 80s all active because my goodness, we can all learn from each other. It just
Yeah.
is such a great opportunity. And even in our office right now, it is so much fun because I think we have about 8 or 9 people in our office that are under the age of like 33, 34.
Yeah.
And, most of them are plus or minus 3 years of my oldest son's age. So it's like I'm at a different stage in my life, but I'm just jazzed just being around them and just seeing how much they want to succeed, which is a
Right.
lot of fun to see.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And that like synergy, I think, goes both ways. At least like what we've seen in our office is, on the younger guy side, when you're coming in and maybe you're a couple of years in the business or you're hitting the phones for the first year. I mean, with me, I've been with Dean Saunders, Gary Ralston, and Todd Dantzler to start off my career, and like that was one of the things that coming in when you're just start off on the phone and you're young and broke and know a little bit about real estate. And I still talk in third person. It's always us, it's always we, it's always
Yep.
our team, because we have done we've been in the business for 30, 40 years, and this firm has done
Correct.
$4 billion in transactions. Me, it's like at the time I've done almost nothing, but the guy that right upstairs that's looking over my shoulder, he is going to he's going to be with me every step of the way. And then and vice versa. The tenacity that I was coming into the business with, as some of my mentors were say in their 60s. It's like they feed off that tenacity. They love that. They get energized by it, to see us win, to see us do deals, and then it just kind of raising tides, as they say.
That's a
But even
perfect way to describe it.
even at like much different points in their career, like 30 or 40 years apart, it's still like rising the tide through the office. So it's cool to see that you guys have that.
No, there's no doubt about that. And I have 2 people on my team right now, and they're both in their 20s, and I am so pumped about it, because as I've told them, I said, there is an opportunity for us to just to do so much together. And I said, I would love to have a situation where in 5 years, our splits are completely flipped. You're the ones that are making the huge chunks of it. I
Yeah,
am actually hopefully been able to spend some time with grandkids while still taking care of my clients.
yeah.
But I'm not the one that's running every tour in Pittsburgh for the next 12 months or whatever the case
Right,
might
right.
be.
Yeah, no, that's special, and that's the way to do it for sure. So, I mean, you've been in the office sector since the beginning of your career. And, over the last, I mean, and there was probably more challenges before this, but in my career, office has faced more of the challenges probably. I mean, I've saw it even beforehand, say 7, 10, 15 years ago when a lot of, say, like call centers were being outsourced and things like that. So that was a little bit of a speed bump, I guess you would say. And then COVID, work from home initiative, and things like that. So I mean, over the last like 10, 15 years in your business, some of the challenges in the office sector, I mean, you're still here and thriving as a commercial broker in the office sector. So, how have you, like personally and professionally, persevered like through those challenges?
Most importantly, it is communicating not only with our clients to understand what they need, but in a lot of cases, especially over the past 4 years, most of them don't know what they need. But the communication that is also with the landlords and with the landlord brokers. Again, I'm representing tenants, so I am constantly talking with the top agents, office agency brokers in our market. And they know that they can trust me. I know that I can trust them. So they're not giving me confidential information, but they will, let me know, hey, based upon some activity in this building, CoStar is not going to show it, but I understand, Pat, you're working with a 30,000 square foot tenant. Trust me, we can get them in this building and here's what we can do for them. Not
Yeah,
sending us a proposal or anything. So when I go in and talk with my client and my team is sitting there and and we all know occasionally tenants might go on to LoopNet and say, well, what about this? What about that? And then
yeah,
when I'm able to then say, hey, guess what, guys? There are 3 opportunities that don't even show on CoStar or LoopNet that candidly could be home runs for you guys. Then they're like, whoa, what are you talking about? And then you walk them through it and they start understanding, oh, wait, these folks know the market. And
yeah,
the reason we know the market is again, because we're talking to everybody on a regular basis. So some people think, okay, you only want to network, when you think you can get more business out of it. I look at it a little bit differently. If you're meeting with furniture dealers, if you're meeting with architects, you're meeting with contractors, you are understanding what they're doing. They may not tell you exactly the transactions that they're working on, but if they're not growing, then you realize that there's something else that is happening in this market. But when they are busy on, you find out, okay, well, what industries are you busy on? And it allows us to then
yeah.
maybe pivot it when need be. And to me, that has been the most important thing, just communicating with everybody so that we know what's going on in the market, both from a landlord and a tenant standpoint, candidly, before any of the landlords and tenants know as a whole.
That's really good insight. I think, we all have different ways to do business development, but I mean, getting the inside scoop on what's growing, what's not, what type of tenants, talking to the furniture folks and people that are, doing those sort of deals, because that's one of the things about, office buildings, and I mean, really all different tenants. They're usually coming from different sectors, right?
Right.
So, like, I mean, same thing with industrial. We have the folks that are doing the manufacturing, the distribution, and like even in manufacturing, whether it's chemicals or whether it's stuffed animals, like you just never know. So, I mean, I guess that's a great way to kind of like know what's going on in the market as far as tenant activity, between who is actively looking for space, and that's what you're talking about, right? Like, is it
Oh,
the
absolutely.
attorneys? Is it the real estate companies? Is it the tech companies?
And
You
that
kind of
has
know
worked
where to
out really
prospect.
well over the past 15 years. What we have to do now, though, is to understand the financial wherewithal of each of the landlords. And so I'm not talking about what their net worth is or how much money they have in the bank.
Yeah,
It's what is their lender going to allow them to do? Because now we have situations where even some of the strongest landlords in the strongest buildings, they may have another 12% vacancy, but the lenders are saying, hey, we've already invested enough money into this building. We'd much rather be at 88% occupied and not have to build out another 10,000 square feet at $120 a square foot. So
right.
they're in some cases walking away from deals, which that
Yeah,
has never happened before.
yeah. No, that's crazy. And when did that happen? How long has that been
Past
going on?
6 months.
Gotcha.
Yep.
So really, that's who's calling the shots. Is
It's the
who's
lenders,
holding the note.
even in the good buildings.
Yeah.
Because what has
Wow.
happened is the overall value of office buildings has dropped, due
Right.
to interest rates, due to, lower occupancy rates, those types of things. But in doing so, if you think about it, if a building was once valued at $160 a square foot, now it's valued at 80. But we know construction costs are off the, charts. If you have to put another $110 a square foot into the space, you then have a more money in the tenant improvements than you do in the value of your building.
Hmm.
That
Right.
is something that's not sustainable. Now, on the other hand, there are a lot of landlords who are in this for the long haul.
Yeah.
And, we do have some landlords here. And candidly, I've seen this across the country. Every market has some landlords who are realizing, hey, I have access to capital. I want to have, these large tenants in here for the next 10 or 15 years. So, yes, I am going to write the checks in order to get them in here and get their space customized for what they want. And it's just knowing which of those landlords can actually do that.
So that's really good insight to know how that game is being, like how those deals are playing out, who's calling the shots, how they're getting done. No, that certainly makes sense. And so, and with that, I mean, the overall demand with the work from home initiative. I mean, on the tenant rep side, and I mean, how much? Because I've bounced this back around with other people, and obviously I'm an in office type guy, and the perspective of the tenant. I mean, we've seen it kind of play out pretty. It's been a little funny, from COVID. It's like, hey, everybody's working from home, and like this is the new standard. And then like these big Fortune 50 companies are like, hey, this is it. We are now work from home. 100% of our workforce or 50%, whatever it is. But it seems like that's changed a good bit. So
Yes.
what have you seen with being in good relationships with the tenants, as far as it goes for you know company success, company culture, engagement, leadership development with employees. How is the work from home initiative and company culture meshed from, like, we all know the what people were saying at COVID, but like what has that now turned into today?
And it's funny, I actually had a conversation today with the CEO of a fast growing engineering company today. We redid their lease about a year ago and we renewed them, did not do any work. And even though they were growing, he's like, nope, we're good. We haven't been filled one day. Well, calls me today and he's like, well, Pat, Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, we don't have enough space for our people. And we're hiring this person and this person. So we know they're going to be in 5 days a week. So the funny thing is that's the third company I've had this conversation with in the past 2 months, because
Wow.
what they're realizing again is the culture is important. And, do I expect many groups to ever go back to 5 days a week? I don't. I think, they're realizing that, there is a balance. And if you're in the office at least Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, and possibly Mondays, but you work from home on Friday, then, we're going to do well. And I've seen that with law firms. I've seen, because younger associates are starting to realize, all right, yeah, I'm making money, I'm doing a good job, but when that new case comes in, if that senior attorney said, all right, I need an associate to work on this, and you have Linda, who's right down the hallway, who has been busting her butt getting into the office every day, there, and then I have Jim, who's at home, who's a great attorney, but I haven't seen him in the past 2 weeks. Guess who's getting on that case?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that has really been starting to spread into most industries.
Yeah.
And so now it's designing space to meet the needs of what happens on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursdays.
Yeah. No, that's interesting, and I think that was kind of like the halfway point of the conversation, and like it's good to get where the conversation is today, because I remember the COVID conversation was like, hey, everybody's working from home forever, is kind of like what some people were having, and
Right.
then that was some people's thoughts, and then in the middle was more of like a hybrid schedule, which I think some people like now have done like, hey, one day a week from home, or that flexibility, because we found that people like that. I don't know if this came to fruition or you've ever seen this play out successfully yet, but the idea that you have A block and B block type employees, where you have a Monday, Wednesday, Friday employee and then a Tuesday, Thursday employee, like sharing the same desk and workspace, so you can reduce the office size. Like, have you seen that play out at all, or is that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We've had some clients that have done that. And I can tell you the big four accounting firms are already implementing that. They, more than any group, realize, let's say an auditor's in the office probably only one day a week. They realize, well, we can just have a reservation system. So, we downsized one of the big four about a year and a half ago from 3 floors down to one. And it's worked out very well because of exactly what you just described. You're going to be in on Friday. So you reserve a spot for Friday. You can do it from your phone, takes 5 minutes. And then as a result, no one's going into the office saying, oh, wait, I have nowhere to sit. I just parked and, I've just wasted my time. So we're seeing that happen. We're also seeing a number of the more well-funded, well-thought-out landlords who are creating parking scenarios where, companies don't need to, if they have 50 employees, they don't need to buy 50 leases, for each month. Instead, they get, let's say, 25 swipes per day or per month. So that if all of a sudden, at the end of the month, they are, let's say, 20 swipes above, they'll just get charged for those 20 swipes. But the
Gotcha.
company is only spending money on leases for 25, not 50.
Yeah.
So it's saving, groups a lot of money, but it's giving more, you know, motivation to get the tenants to come into the space, knowing that they're not having to come out of pocket for the parking, for example, if they're working in a downtown environment.
With that, like, workplace culture and kind of the office environment, we've seen some pretty crazy buildings. I mean, you see the headlines for new developments going up. I mean, I'm in Central Florida, so a lot of times it's Miami. Somebody's building a crazy new office building, and some of the amenities that you've seen. I mean, to think about, like, if you walk into a 1980s office building that hasn't been touched versus a 2023 office building that has, with cafes and um, all the amenities that you'll see for an office building. What are you seeing? Like, what are the most common amenities that tenants are requesting or desiring in these larger scale office buildings?
Believe it or not, the most important one is having a conferencing center so that you can have, let's say, a common training room, maybe a couple, smaller board rooms, and then smaller meeting rooms. Because I know historically, I've had so many clients that say, okay, I need to have a room that can fit 25 people in for training. And then now I'll ask, okay, well, how often does that happen? Well, once a month. So instead now of building, a 300 square foot room that has a lot of audio and electrical and in essence cost,
Yeah,
instead they can work with their landlord and just use the training room on the first floor, the first Monday of every month. And
yeah.
some cases it's free, but even if it's $75 a month, you're so far ahead of the curve from an economic standpoint. And that's one of the things that's going to allow tenants to take less square footage, meaning they're not going to be spending as much, but they also can pay a higher rate for nicer space because they're taking less square footage. So it's really cyclical in how it happens. But fitness centers are important, coffee shops are important, cafes are important, but at least in my opinion, training centers and common conference rooms, those are critical.
I would say, because I've always thought about this way, the conversation of like who's making the decisions, especially with like the work from home and how
Yep.
things go. It's like, who's obviously, they want to have employee culture and everybody to be, happy and thriving. But you think about the things that are most important, like originally I would think like cafes and restaurants and things like that for the employees to enjoy. But I mean, it's the stress of the manager, of the boss, that is like, hey, we got 100 people coming in, we got 50 offices, and we only got space for 50.
Right.
They're the ones that are making the decisions on the lease, so having that type of space, I guess that makes sense as far as like why that's most important in the in the realm of lease negotiation and selecting a space. So
Absolutely. Yep.
no, that's really cool. Well, this is awesome, man. I love digging in. I haven't had somebody on that's specialized, solely in the office sector. So I mean, and a lot of people are wondering what it looks like. So from your perspective, like, what does the office space in? I mean, I guess the office building in 10 years, and then the office space in 10 years. If we can separate those, maybe of like, what does that look like?
I think, a lot of people aren't going to want to hear this, but virtually every downtown probably has 20% more office space than what they need. And I've actually had conversations with some architects, and they agree with me. Not that this is ever going to happen, but we really would be better off in most CBDs tearing down, buildings that are B minus C plus type buildings. Especially as long as they don't have any historical benefits associated with them, because the cost to get those buildings in line with the spaces that you were just asking me about right now, and like, I don't see construction prices coming down. I mean, these
Yeah.
contractors and vendors are getting their numbers now. Why would they bring them down to a pre-COVID level?
Right.
So ultimately, the inventory is too high, and I think there's so much more that can be done. There's a couple buildings in our market that if they came down, you could have a nice park-like setting and a gorgeous restaurant on that site, because most people don't realize that some of our restaurants are doing record numbers in downtown Pittsburgh, but
Right.
it's all dinner. Well, if all of a
Right.
sudden you had more people in nicer office buildings, you could then open up more restaurants, and it just could look a lot better.
Yeah.
But the
No, that.
space itself, it is going to be flexible. It is
Yeah.
going to be inviting, and it's going to be a collaborative type environment. I do think most people are going to want to at least have access to a private office, but those big corner offices that were prevalent when I first started my career, they're a thing of the past,
Yeah.
because no one's sitting in their office now for 12 hours a day, 5 days a week. But you
Right.
do need to be in your office to make client calls, to make
Right.
personal calls, to talk about HR stuff or whatever. So
Right.
you're going to have a mixture of enjoyable, relaxing, collaborative areas with nice, functional, even 10 by 10 offices.
Yeah. No, that makes total sense, and that'll be really cool to see. I'm excited for the office sector and what it's going to transform into. Because I mean, I think without a doubt, we're still going to be doing office work in the next 10 years. But what does it look like? And even when times come, if there's things like new initiatives like work from home, or there's overbuilt supply, whatever it is that causes the innovation and that causes the change to happen. Which I mean, whenever we do that as Americans, we don't get worse. We only get better. So it is cool to see, and it'll be exciting to see where it goes over the next 10 years.
It
Um,
really will.
so yeah, and it looks like you're going to be a big part of that as well. So that's exciting, and we'll have to catch up, here soon, and learn more about that as it continues to change. Potentially have you back on, um,
I
before
would
ten
love it.
years. Before 10 years.
Thank you.
Yeah. So before we go, really just for the people that are getting started in commercial real estate, for the people that are brand new to the business, maybe in year one or two, trying to find a way. What's one piece of advice that you would give to that person, or your younger self, within the first couple years of the business?
Most importantly, have a mentor and have somebody who you can trust, not just somebody who's a good dude or a good lady or whatever, but someone who has your best interest at heart.
Yeah.
Uh, this is a very difficult business. And Augie, you hit on it earlier. When you can say, we have been doing this much in business, we've been around this long. If you are a 28-year-old brand new into this industry and saying, okay, I did a deal last month. Okay, great. But the people that you're competing with are on teams, that have been doing collectively, as you said, $1 billion+ and doing it for 50 plus years. So
Yeah.
have the ability to have somebody who not only will be a mentor to you, but will somebody who you can actually work with. Honestly, that's the best thing that happened to me was, someone brought me on their team. within the first year. There is no chance that I would have been as successful as I have been without that occurring. Could I have
Yeah.
made a nice living? Absolutely. Because I'm just one of those people that'll just put my nose to the grindstone and just go and do it.
Yeah.
But it would not have been at the same level without having the ability to be on a team and to learn from those folks.
Yeah. And then to go back, that's one of the things that I heard you say was that you got in the seat and then you went crazy on calls and you put in a ton of reps. And that's one of the things that team saw attractive in you. And one of the things I've said over and over again, and I heard somebody smarter than me say, was, the fastest way to the top is to find someone with, incredible momentum and then provide value to them, because the person that's doing 4, 5, 600 million bucks, whatever it is, let's say, hey, I'm brand new to the business and I don't know how to do those big deals, but man, I can dial the phone, I can do social media, I can do tours, I can do whatever it is
Yep.
to provide that value. So and that's what it is. It's providing value to the market, really, in multiple ways, to the brokers to their clients, but the juniors to the brokers, and that's really what we see the most successful people do. So, man, this was incredible. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Where can people find you? Where can people connect with you? What social platforms you on?
So the best one is always LinkedIn for me. I do a ton on LinkedIn, and when I say a ton, I post typically about once a week, but I try to make it a little bit more formative than just liking or whatever.
Yeah,
Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it at this point in time,
yeah.
is more of my personal, where I'm spending more time talking about Pitt and Gonzaga basketball right now than I am
There you
about
go.
anything else.
Yeah.
So those are the two that would be best.
Yeah, no, that's great. And yeah, everybody tuning in, feel free to connect with Patrick on
Please.
either Twitter or LinkedIn. Shoot him a message. Somebody that's very well respected in the industry, and just an incredible resource of knowledge and information and wisdom. So that is all we have for today. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, comment below on what you want to hear next time. And we'll see you all then. Peace out.
Thanks, Augie.